All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. You are here at the Beyond the Archive. It's a live panel discussion where we're going to explore how LGBTQ plus history can help those of us here today build a greater sense of belonging at work. So it looks like folks are kind of coming in right now into our Zoom meeting room. We're also live streaming this. So if you're joining through LinkedIn or YouTube, welcome. If you're not familiar with me, I am your host, Rhodes Perry. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I'm the founder of Rhodes Perry Consulting. I have the pleasure of helping organizational and people development leaders upend the annual $1 trillion problem of exclusion by building spaces of belonging. And many of us here, I think we can recognize that we are living in an era defined by chaos, relentless attacks on civil and human rights around the globe, and the critical work of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So the question is not if we need guidance. I think we know we're looking for guidance. It's where can we find it? Where can we trust it? And today, I think you'll receive just that valuable guidance from two luminaries who will take us on a journey into the past. There, we're going to be uncovering how the struggles and triumphs of LGBTQ plus history serve as a powerful roadmap to build belonging at work and beyond. So we're hosting this event today also to celebrate LGBTQ plus History Month. So if you didn't know, we celebrate this month every October, lifting up both the triumphs and also to remember the struggles that our communities have gone through. And I'm just really thrilled to celebrate with everyone who's made the time to be here. So thank you. I know time is really valuable. And to our guests, thank you so much. Thank you for deciding to be here today to share your smarts and all your thoughtful insights. So without further ado, our guests are both Bennett Singer and Monique Hunt. So just a little bit about each of our guests. Bennett is an Emmy-nominated documentary filmmaker for his work on films like Cured and Brother Outsider, The Life of Bayard Rustin. And we'll be viewing a couple of those clips today, which I'm super excited about. And then our second guest is Monique Hunt, a Chicago-based people and culture strategist and lifelong learner. And I love how you self-describe yourself, Monique, a right-brained culture nerd committed to creating workplaces that champion authenticity, courage, and accountability. So without further ado, Monique, Bennett, welcome to being here at the Imagine Belonging podcast. It's really an honor to have both of you here. And yes, awesome.
Wonderful to be here. Thank you for inviting
Bro.
us to dig into some of this history and think about the ongoing resonance and lessons and takeaways and inspirational messages that can be derived from these films and from conversations about them. So it's really a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Bennett. And thank you, Monique, as well. It's really great to have you here. And we were just we were joking, right? Because we're going to be watching some documentary films. And then we're trying to make meaning, like how do we bridge using films like these to bring them into the workplace? And Monique is definitely going to be our kind of business translator of like, why would we do this? What's the value, especially in this moment right now? So hopefully by the end of today's conversation, you'll understand and be able to bring this back into your own workplaces. So, without further ado, I think what we'll do first is just view a short clip from Brother Outsider. And this highlights, for folks who aren't familiar with this film, it's excellent. It highlights the civil rights icon Bayard Rustin, who is a gay man whose identity was a source of both power and conflict in the civil rights movement. So, Julie, if we can start off with that clip, let's do so. And then Bennett will start with a question for you.
We need in every community a group of angelic troublemakers. Our power is in our ability to make things unworkable. The only weapon we have is our bodies, and we need to tuck them in places so wheels don't turn.
It was an extraordinary political statement to bring thousands of people to Washington to demand civil rights laws.
Well, we have appealed for 100,000, and I think we will have that many and go over that figure. At this point, I cannot say how many.
Everybody from the newspapers on the one hand to the Kennedy administration on the other sought to discourage us.
pictures of the march are being sent to other countries of the world, and this will lead some of those countries to believe that people don't have freedom in this country. They do have freedom. They have more freedom here than in any country in the world. The Negroes in this country own more refrigerators and more automobiles than they do in any other country.
Thurman had waited until about 3 weeks before the March on Washington to take the Senate floor and attack Bayard as being a homosexual who, with an arrest record, as being a draft evader and a felon, and as being a member of the Communist Party.
The article states that he was convicted in 1953 in Pasadena, California, of a morals charge. The words morals charge are true, but this is a clear-cut case of toning down the charge. The conviction was sex perversion.
The senator is not interested in me if I were a murderer, a thief, a liar, or a pervert. The senator is interested in attacking me because he is interested in destroying the movement. He will not get away with this.
He had been attacked by an enemy of the people, as far as we were concerned. Now, I am sure there may have been some homophobes among black people at that point. But I am telling you that if there were, they understood how to behave when Strom Thurmond came forward to attack what many of us believe was the only man who could have pulled off that march. The night before the march, somebody had to stay there so that the last phone call got an answer. That meant that I could fly. Everybody else was going on a bus, on a train, and this was too good to pass up, so I volunteered to stay. And I flew the next morning. And if I live to be 500, I will never forget what I saw. I'm on my way.
All right, so welcome for folks who just joined. We just got to see our first clip from Brother Outsider, and Bennett, I love your background. So Bennett is the director of that film, and to kick us off, Bennett, maybe could you share a little bit more of how this clip fits into the broader film? And then I have a question of how we can relate that to the workplace.
Absolutely, and let me just say this was, like every film, very much a team effort, and I was the co-director with my colleague Nancy Cates, and Sam Pollard was our executive producer. But really, we wanted to look at Rustin's life and to unerase, to use that word, or to shine a spotlight on him after decades of marginalization. You know, historians have said that he's been forgotten by history, left out of history, or even expunged from history. And to expunge someone isn't an accident, right? That's an intentional act of omission. And I think the main reason that Rustin had been marginalized was that he was radically out as a gay man during the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, when that was such a bold and radical decision, such a rare and daring identity. So the film looks at his life as a civil rights activist, an organizer, a strategist, and a gay man, and those intersections, the ways in which his openness and authenticity affected, both liberated him and became an easy way to attack him, as we saw in that clip. And, you know, I think, just to step back a moment, that sense of his dual identity is really what we wanted to capture in the title, Brother Outsider. And there's a really inspiring op-ed that was published some years ago by the then head of the NAACP, the oldest civil rights organization in this country, and the head of Human Rights Campaign, the largest LGBTQ advocacy organization in this country. And I just wanted to quote one line from that, because I mean, I think the fact that they published this joint piece is quite notable, but this insight where they said, to Rustin, fighting for his equality as a Black man while leaving his identity as a gay man unspoken would have been an unthinkable betrayal. It was his firm belief that silence about either identity meant that he accepted the system of discrimination that allowed hatred about both to persist. And I think that is really at the heart of his life and hopefully at the heart of the film, looking at that reality and that remarkable phenomenon in terms of that intersectional identity.
I love that. And thank you for sharing that op-ed from both HRC and the NAACP, kind of bringing it into the workplace. You bring this film to many different communities and also inside of organizations. And so in the spirit of looking at national organizations, civil and human rights organizations like the HRC and the NAACP, what's the promise of a film like this for example, for an ERG event, right? Like I think that you've done this for a number of organizations. What does that look like to help ERG members kind of recognize like we carry so many different identities, right? And we, to kind of like downplay one of our identities kind of limits our authenticity in life and certainly at the workplace. So I'm curious like what this looks like inside of an organization and maybe some of the conversations that come from it.
Right. Well, yes, we have discovered this really fascinating niche where these films have been featured at now more than 100 workplaces, both in the US and Europe and Asia. And I will say that some of the most compelling and powerful and memorable events have been the ones that have been co-sponsored by the LGBTQ ERG and the Black or African American or multicultural group, which is such an organic partnership and collaboration based on the content of this film. But all too often, I would say this is the very first time that these ERGs have ever done anything together. Just last month, I was in London at a bank that hosted a Rustin event, and indeed, that was the first time for this company that their ERGs, multicultural and LGBTQ, had partnered on an event. And I will say that it was really an emotional and inspirational evening with so many moving moments of bridge building and revelations about what it means to be in these communities and the ways in which there are shared experiences and differences, but just that process of connecting, talking to each other, finding a focus in Rustin's story, the struggles and the triumphs of his life, and then mingling in a reception where people can actually talk and connect and process is so uplifting and really an unexpected niche for us as filmmakers. But I really have found it so nourishing and gratifying to be able to share the film with folks in this unexpected context, but really to build on what the ERGs are trying to do within their own workplaces, which is create a culture of inclusion and belonging and a focus on what does it mean to be authentic, which is the heart of this film. As you saw in that clip, there was Rustin being attacked on the floor of the US Senate by Senator Strom Thurmond, who said, this is a known sexual pervert, which in the language of the time was accurate because not only was Rustin open about being gay, but he had actually been arrested on a morals charge in the 1950s and sentenced to 60 days in jail under the sodomy laws, which I'll say as a footnote, his arrest was subsequently pardoned by California Governor Gavin Newsom a few years ago. But anyway, there is this very rich process whereby Rustin's story and his struggles can open up a huge, array of conversations and connections. And indeed, the most powerful events are the ones that are jointly sponsored, where people come together to think about those connections and build on them.
Yeah, it gives me it's such affirmation because I feel like 20 years ago, as ERGs were starting to get get established in different organizations, the recommendation was to do cross like joint events, right? And really to try to bridge across differences and have these kind of conversations. So kind of to fast forward to where we are today, it's like it's happening, and just for you to share some of those experiences with us, it gives me a lot of hope of what still can be possible based on what we can imagine together. So Monique, I wanted to go to you, and I know you have a lot to say on ERG capacity building and the power of these events. I also wanted to kind of hone in on how you describe yourself as someone who really values hard skills. And I like when we were kind of initially talking about this panel of shifting, the conversation when people start to say soft skills, it's really like these are hard skills, these are essential skills. And so I'm curious for you, especially for, you're in HR. And so when leaders are facing workplace conflict and uncertainty, especially in these moments, how could a shared experience like watching a film like Brother Outsider, for example, serve as one of those non-confrontational backdrops to build these essential hard skills so that we can start having more difficult conversations as they arise in the workplace instead of kind of avoiding them?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me here, because I'm so thrilled to be a part of this conversation. You and Bennett are people that I can champion all day and every day. So I'm grateful for the opportunity. And as Bennett was sharing that he's got over 100 workplace experiences now and featuring his films, I've been very, very lucky to have had success at featuring them at 2 different organizations over the past 4 or 5 years. And without question, without a doubt, featuring his events in a webinar style series, they've been the highest rated events that I've been able to do over the course of my time at both organizations. And just to the point that he made is that the backdrop in the medium of film, which is really it's an accessible medium that people find both entertaining and educational. It's, gone, unfortunately, are the days where people will pick up a thick manual or a 300-page book and invest that time and energy in consuming content that way. Whereas a documentary film, either in the full-length form or in the variety of clips that he and his team can provide, it immediately gives you impact and inspiration to recognize that the reason why we are here today in the moment that we're in today is directly tied to all of our pasts. And whether you're looking at it from the perspective of Black history or LGBTQ plus history, this is our American history, this is our global history, and it gives you a deeper, more empathetic reach into yourself, into understanding why your colleague thinks the way that they do, or why your manager behaves the way that they do, or the reason why the organization is navigating the way that it does. We all are living within the context of the information that Bennett and his team have put together in these beautiful documentaries that tell the story of where we come from. So when you're having these conflicts on your team, or inter-team conflicts, or even maybe just with your direct manager, I don't know that we always pause and think, why is this opinion or why is this perspective, demonstrating the way that it is? Mm-hmm. And when you can have a shared experience of watching a documentary like this, whether in your own ERG or in that co-collaboration of multiple ERGs, all of a sudden the light bulbs start popping on. Mm-hmm. Oh, I never thought about it this way, or oh, I never realized that this even happened, or that this person even existed. In Bayard Rustin's instance, I think so many of us would, when you see a picture of Martin Luther King Jr., you don't always pay attention to the people who are standing next to him or standing beside him. You don't realize how those people have made such tremendous impact. And for one reason or another, you never learned about them, either in school or in your place of worship, or, just in your community. But those are the people who really are the engine behind the famous names and faces that we all did get the opportunity to learn about. And so in a workplace or just in your day-to-day life, when you wonder, well, I'm just one person, what can I do? I'm not famous. I don't have, a bankroll of money to go out there and do things. I always encourage people to look at the people behind that famous name and that famous face, because those are the people who are really making things happen. And so when, Bennett, like I said, has done a beautiful job of telling Bayard's story, bringing that inspiration into a workplace is where the light bulbs go on of, oh, this is how we need to collaborate. Oh, this is how now I feel inspired to innovate. Because if you honestly, if you show me an employee who is underperforming or a team that isn't being innovated, and I'll show you a team that's not inspired. So
Yeah.
creating a shared experience of being able to watch a film like this and to understand where we came from, to better understand where we are now, that's where the juices start to flow. And you can have those moments at the water cooler or in the hallway, or even in your one-on-ones with your manager. Remember that scene in Brother Outsider when this happened? That's the way I feel right now. And that gives you a better understanding of how to better relate and move forward in your day-to-day operations.
Yes. Yes. So many powerful insights right there, Monique. And that piece on inspiration, it's just thinking about effective leadership is, are you able to, like, one, be able to regulate your team in moments like these that we're in, and also to remind the team of like what they're doing together and to inspire them to continue to innovate and be creative. And I love how you talk about the power of these films being able to do just that. And also just like thinking about history, right? So many things that we don't know, right? That documentary films can lift up, right? Or things that we may have forgotten as a reminder. And I'd love to go into just another clip so we can experience some of these reminders. And then this is from your film Cured, right? And so this is a part of it's a lesser known chapter, I think, for a lot of our guests here today of kind of the LGBTQ plus movement, our history. And this is particularly the movement to declassify homosexuality as a mental illness. It was once listed in the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, the DSM. So Julie, if we could roll that clip, and then we'll have a few questions on that.
John came to Philadelphia in 1964 to start a residency at the University of Pennsylvania. He ran into terrible homophobia there, and he got fired for being gay. It took a lot for him to be quiet about it. He wanted to help with the 1972 meeting in Dallas, but had to protect himself.
He said, I'll do it only on condition that I can wear a wig and a mask and use a voice distorting microphone.
Barbara and I told this to Frank, and he said, oh, that's terrible. That goes against everything we have been fighting for, to have somebody in a mask. So we had a big fight over that, but we did prevail. And Dr. John Fryer became Dr. H, Homosexual Anonymous. When we got there, it was packed. Our panel was called Psychiatry, Friend or Foe, a Dialogue. Barbara brought out Dr. H Anonymous. I started to take pictures, and I could hardly believe it. I could have fallen off my chair. We thought he would have on a nice little mask like the Lone Ranger. No, he was in this grotesque big mask, a big wig on. It looked more like Halloween than anything else. We were all very concerned about how this would go over.
I thought this tape was lost to history.
I'm a homosexual. I'm a psychiatrist. It is time that real flesh and blood stand up before this organization and ask to be listened to and understood. I'm in disguise tonight in order that I might speak freely. What is it like to be a homosexual who is also a psychiatrist? Many of us work 20 hours daily to protect institutions who would literally chew us up and spit us out if they knew the truth. All of us have something to lose. We may not be in consideration for professorship. Our supervisor may ask us to take a leave of absence or fire us. We are taking an even bigger risk, however, in not living fully our humanity, with all the lessons it has to teach all the other humans around us. This is the greatest loss, our honest humanity.
He represented all the people who were hiding and invisible, and it turned out to be just enormously powerful.
It helped people know that within psychiatry, there was injustice. Not just we were harming other patients, we were harming psychiatrists too, and the field of psychiatry. And did we really want to eliminate lots of good people from the field because they were gay or bisexual?
It was a game changer that really got some of the psychiatrists rethinking their position.
All right. Every time I watch these films, I get a little teary-eyed, just to kind of go back into the archives. So we're going beyond the archives. So that's why we're here today. So Bennett, we looked at a chapter in our past that was pretty challenging, and I'm curious in terms of parallels, right? Like between what we just saw in terms of the social oppression that was depicted in Cured and the burdens that many of us who are LGBTQ plus today carry just in the world that we're in, and certainly in the workplace. Where do you see parallels? What are you seeing that's changed? And how might this chapter in history help us kind of navigate these times?
Sure. Just to situate this clip within the broader context of the film, until 1973, according to the medical establishment and psychiatry, if you or anyone who was gay or lesbian, then they were automatically classified as mentally disordered and in need of a cure. Sometimes those cures took the form of talk therapy. Other times there were more brutal forms of attempted cures, including lobotomies and electroshock therapy and hysterectomies and castration. And, the early part of the film documents that in terms of what were the stakes of this diagnosis. But then the rest of the film, like 80% of it, documents this campaign that quite rapidly brought about a transformation. The activists saw this injustice, set out to speak truth to power, and won. And that, as of 1973, at the end of the film, there's a headline that says 20 million gay people cured, which was quite a moment. So it's really quite an uplifting story. And I think in some ways, if you look at the history of the APA as an institution, that is one really striking example of an institutional transformation. In 1972, which is when this clip took place at the annual meeting, John Fryer was indeed an APA member, a licensed psychiatrist, and yet understood very clearly that if he got up there as his authentic self, he would most likely have lost his job, lost his medical license, been exiled from the field of psychiatry. And so the fact that he wore that mask in this case was incredibly strategic and smart and, contrary maybe to the principles of gay liberation in general, but in some ways it underscored what visibility and invisibility mean, and what, his whole mission or his whole purpose was to say, I want to be included in this organization. I am part of this organization, but let me bring my authentic self to my work and, look at me as a human being. Let's, find our shared humanity. Don't exile me because I'm a gay man. Fast forward 50 years, the CEO of the APA, when we made this film, who's interviewed in the film, was indeed an out gay man. The APA as an institution gave us a six-figure grant to take this film into medical schools. And we did about 20 different in-person screenings for psychiatrists and other doctors, LGBTQ and beyond, who, I think benefited a lot from thinking about this moment in their own profession. And so there is that positive transformation within the world of medicine and psychiatry. At the same time, I think while folks in workplaces are not feeling compelled to wear masks literally, I think so many of our, coworkers are wearing metaphorical masks. And there still is this culture of feeling like I can't bring my full, open, authentic self to work. I mean, I worked at Time Magazine back in the 90s, and there was early days of an ERG there, but it was definitely a dilemma in my own life about how open should I be in that sense. And even before that, I worked at ironically, looking back at the film production company that made the iconic civil rights history series, Eyes on the Prize.
Yeah.
And there were so many LGBTQ people on the team, and yet it was never discussed. Those connections between civil rights and gay rights were totally unexplored, and there was a wall of silence around my identity and around the identity of so many people on that team, which I think reflects where this culture was in the late 80s and early 90s. So thinking about how things have changed in my own life, it's very striking. But I think that sense of not knowing, if I come out at work, if I put my partner's picture on my desk, if I talk about my authentic self, will I be supported or will I be stigmatized? And that sense of not knowing, I think, is very much an ongoing aspect of parallel to what John Fryer experienced. I did a book actually a few years ago called LGBTQ Stats, which, as the title suggests, is a giant compendium of facts and figures about LGBTQ lives. And I was struck by one more recent stat that's from a 2024 survey, which came to the conclusion that only 13.7% of LGBTQ professionals felt they could be fully authentic at work.
Wow.
And who knows, who was surveyed for that, and how exactly reliable that number is. But it's pretty sobering to think that there's a long way to go in terms of creating fully inclusive workplaces where people can indeed not have to ask these questions. Do I have to wear a metaphorical mask when I go to work?
Right. Absolutely. I mean, you're speaking a lot to the lack of psychological safety in the workplace. And the reminder to anyone who's tuning in right now, if you have a close colleague, if you're not LGBTQ plus yourself, right? If you have a close colleague who is, and they've shared, something precious about their life, whether it's their family or, someone like me, gender history pieces, like that's a gift, right? That's a gift for real connection. And there's a lot of trust that has been extended your way because of the risks, right? And just for, kind of context too, when I watched that clip of the film, I'm thinking of, my siblings who are trans and non-binary who are service members. 15,000 people just lost their jobs at the beginning of this year. So it's like the past is, there's lessons to be learned. And so how do we show up right now, if we have some power and privilege in the workplace to keep this in mind, right? That it's if the coming out process to share more about who you are, it's not static, right? It happens again and again. And this clip just kind of brought that to mind of like the costs, when this was taking place before the early 70s, and still where we are today, right? That laws and policies can change, and it takes a while for hearts and minds to shift, right? And that's the cultural pieces. And so, Monique, I wanted to go to you, right? Because this also impacts our work, whether it's people and culture work or diversity and equity and inclusion work, especially with DEI initiatives. They're being overly scrutinized and even shut down in some organizations. And you've had a lot of success, like even in this climate, pitching these kinds of events to top executives. And I know there's a number of people here today who are hungry of like, this is great. How do I bring this into my workplace? And so I'm curious, if you could share a little bit of your key strategies for getting that kind of buy-in to make the case for how these kind of documentaries not only help LGBTQ plus people, but really help bridge across differences. I know that will help a lot of us here today.
Sure. No, I'm happy to. And where I first start with that question is speaking to what you just shared, is a lot of times people potentially on this call who we start with our hearts and minds and wanting to really go there to shift the hearts and minds of the people that we work with, and certainly the people we work for. But I don't know that that's really an effective strategy in order to move needles. That doesn't mean that your senior leaders or your executives don't have some shifting that they need to do, but tugging at heartstrings isn't really the way that I would go about doing it. I think really data is going to be your best friend when you make the approach to create some strategic shifts. And I've been very, very lucky and very, very grateful for the support and multiple organizations from human resources business partners, from training and development leaders, and interestingly enough, from legal teams. Your legal partners within organizations, they want to help you. They without fail understand the value of the work that DEI leaders or culture leaders are doing in the organization, particularly when it comes to upskilling leaders to have, crucial conversations in culturally appropriate ways. And your HRBPs, they can give you insights in real time to show you where the trends are ticking up with corrective actions that indicate we need to do some cultural competency development. Your learning and development or your training teams, they can give you real-time data that shows we've got a crack in the sidewalk over here when it comes to leaders not having effective one-on-ones or not having effective team meetings that can sometimes lead to either assumptions being made or misinterpretations of, for example, they're not making eye contact with a client, or they're making unusual gestures with a team member. And, sometimes those things genuinely need correcting. And then other times there are just things that we don't understand as culturally relevant happenings that are going on in the workplace. And so when you can connect with those business partners in a collaborative way and get that data, get that quantitative data on paper, you can actually see what the organization needs in real time that you can help facilitate the growth, particularly of your leaders, but of the entire employee population. And so, as Bennett was saying before, that collaboration piece that we're all tasked with being better collaborators because, for the most part, people are back in office and, and working side by side each other again. But if you're not doing that in an intentional way that can really show some scripted numbers to say, hey, we've got some real strong areas of opportunity in this area. And here is how, either partnering with our ERGs or, featuring these documentaries in long or short form, doing that as an educational supplement to what you already have on your docket can really start to bring out some of those conversations in an organic way versus bringing someone into your office and having kind of a finger waggy conversation, which those aren't always the most effective way to move the needle in efficiently. So you can get some action with that, but in order to really have people pause and consider in an empathetic, compassionate way, oh, okay, here's why I need to make a shift in my behavior, or here's why this corrective action came my way. here's why I'm going to be better in my one-on-ones, because I now understand where this person or where this potential group might be coming from. So again, it's in the collaboration and it's in the compilation of those data points that are going to really help you sell that experience to your senior team.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Just kind of going back to the business case and, sharing ROI in a way that for busy people who are moving a mile a minute, like how can this actually help some of those pain points? Like you said, I like the kind of like the crack in the sidewalk as the analogy there. Um, I wanna go into, we have one other clip, and Julie, I think we can get to the queer to queer, and this is more about intergenerational dynamics, right? And so I know a lot of organizational and people leaders here, we get it. We're trying to make the mix work. I think 4 or 5 generations in the workplace right now, depending on how you're quantifying those generations. And there's a lot of differences between them. And certainly within the LGBTQ plus community, there's a lot of differences between the generations. And I love this clip from Queer to Queer. So Julie, if we can watch that, if we could roll that clip, and then Ben, I have a question for you on what we're about to see.
Even just walking in and seeing you was a moment where immediately I was like, oh my God, my community, my family.
People my age are in a lot of pain and really scared. We don't always know how to ask for the tenderness that we need.
A lot of people assume that, because we are this age, we have nothing to offer. We refuse to be invisible.
How dare we stand on your shoulders and only look up? How dare we?
If we want to see genuine community work be done, we must begin supporting in and investing youth-directed activism work, and that's what we've been doing.
So when you are confronted with something and you know in your heart that you have to fight back and some old fart tells you that that won't work, just tell them to f off and do it anyway.
I've ascended from gender. I could play with my fashion, and that's so powerful to me.
Thank you for having this conversation with me.
Well, and thank you. It's very nice to meet you and hear your story. And that's what I think is important about us connecting, is hearing each other's story.
There's folks in the younger generations who kind of want to erase lesbians, and that's painful.
Yes.
And what I want to hold is a both and. I've been thinking about connection, not perfection.
Yeah, and coalition building, not identity politics.
The thing is that us seniors, we started it. Y'all youngins, y'all finish it.
All right, that was a short one and very powerful. I love the how dare we stand on your shoulders and only look up, right? And vice versa, right? So I think there's a lot that's in that, Bennett, and I'm curious. There's some love coming through here as well.
Thank you for the love.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it too. Yeah, that was the most recent project I worked on as one of the multiple co-directors, actually, along with Julie Sandler, who's with us on this call as our tech guru. Thank you, Julie, as always, for making everything run so smoothly. But the idea was to bring together young LGBTQ activists in their teens and 20s and have one-on-one conversations between them and elder LGBTQ activists. We had the funding to do 4 of these short conversations. They're about 10 minutes each. And every single one was revelatory. We just brought these people together who had never met each other. And within minutes, the sparks were just flying and the chemistry was so palpable and the connections. I mean, it really was a remarkable conversation about everything we've been talking about, really, bridge building, personal histories, the connections between historical moments and the evolution of what it has meant to be LGBTQ over the past 50 years. So, and really the value of intergenerational dialogue.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is fundamental. So, and all too rare. I mean, there are some themes here, like having people talk to each other and think about building bridges and common ground and connections. I think that is part of every one of these events that we try to foster. And in Q to Q, that's really literally at the heart of it. where we brought together these two brilliant people and just asked them to chat and turned on a camera. And I'm really proud that we just won, or the series just won, the 2025 award for excellence in digital video from NLGJA, the National Association of LGBTQ Journalists. So that was such an unexpected surprise and so gratifying to get that recognition, with some major national organizations in the mix of award recipients. And I just think it's such a tribute to the folks that are featured in the series. So we're really happy that that's in the world. And I do think we've done, some community events and LGBTQ community centers and different venues, but I think it could have a lot of potential in workplaces. It's new and we haven't yet had that experience, but my sense is, along with the Rustin film and Cured, there could be a very powerful workplace event that focuses on this intergenerational theme.
Yes. So one, congratulations, well deserved. I'm super excited that your film is getting the recognition. I just knowing behind me is just the creation of a book. I can't imagine trying to create a documentary film. So the effort that goes behind that, congratulations. And two, you had said, I think there might be, some kind of meat there for the workplace. And Monique, I saw your expression of like, totally. I'm kind of curious, like if you could kind of make the thought bubble come to life, like what was that thought that you had?
Oh my goodness. Intergenerational conflicts in the workplace? No, that's not the thing.
Irrelevant.
I mean, honestly, I can't think of a hotter topic in any industry for any organization. You can talk to any HR leader and they will tell you it comes up every single day.
Yes.
And it's something that, and it breaks my heart because, to Bennett's point, we have so much to learn from each other. And the question is, are we being intentional about the fact that we need to learn from each other? And are we intentional about the ways that we go about doing it? It is Queer to Queer is fantastic. It's done in a series of short films. So it's not one long continuous one. So any team who's having any sort of conflicts or wants to sort of get inspired can just watch, a 10-15 minute clip and have a full discussion about it. But really, where I think the value of Queer to Queer comes in, or there's so many values, but the thing that strikes me most about it is that technology, we're living in a time where we lean so hard into technology, especially now with AI, that we have really put on the back burner those hard skills, how to be with each other socially, how to build relationships and how to build those bridges. That has now become secondary, and it is so critical to all of our day-to-day interactions. I mean, even just walking into the cafe of your office to get coffee, do you know how to really reach out and connect with someone who you're going to be working with for the rest of the day or the rest of the week? I don't think that we really value that as much right now because we're so tied to our screens. And even with this in-person work dynamic, you can be in an office full of people, but never really engage with them over the course of the day or the week because everyone's just locked in. And so when you have these films that you can share with your teammates and with your leaders, to really remind yourself and to to be inspired, that person probably knows something that I don't, and I need to use them as an untapped resource to help me either solve a problem or to help innovate and move this project forward. Really inviting people who are either younger or newer to the organization. I'm a big fan of having fly on the wall meetings where I'm just going to bring someone from the outside just to come in and listen to what we're talking about and listen to the struggle that we have with some of these problems that maybe they can offer a solution to. It happens all the time. I know back in my talent acquisition days, everyone in my life knew what I did for a living. Why? Because if I'm a recruiter, I'm looking to hire a new chef. The person who delivers my mail has a son who is graduating from culinary school in a year. Great. Why would you, I tell everybody in my circle, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm going through so that they can be an untapped resource for me. And particularly now, as we're losing some of these primary sources, like the Reverend Magora Kennedy, who was just featured in that clip, you know, the time is now to reach out to those people and learn from them. What did you experience? How did you grow? What was your strategy? Really making those connections so that you can better move forward in the future, and so that they have more of a stake to be around to support you through those things.
Yeah.
I think the role of queer to queer.
Yes. I'm so excited for that film. And Bennett, there was a question in the chat, which reminder to folks who are here right now, we have about 10 minutes left, and this is really your time. So if there's a particular question, this is being live streamed. So if you could just type it into the chat, I won't read out your name, but just to kind of make sure that your voice is included in here. If there's any burning questions we want to get to. One of those questions was just, where can the conversations of queer to queer be found? Is it out yet? And if so,
right. Well, it is indeed out. It's streaming on the Out TV platform, but there's also a dedicated website where people can access all 4 conversations for free. And that is at Q, the number 2, the letter Q. So it's Q2Q Talks, TALKS.com. And yeah, we're happy that we can just make it no fee or subscription. It's just there for free access. And I'll quickly say too, it's building on what Monique has said. It was such a two-way process. Like the young people sort of, as I predicted or hoped, really understood what a privilege it was to connect with the elders. But each of the elders also said, my God, I've learned so much from these 20 or 18 or, these young people. And that sense of coming together and really appreciating one another felt very genuine and very authentic. And kind of, I wasn't sure how it would all play out, but there was definitely a two-way sense of, we need each other, and we benefit when we do connect and appreciate and understand each of our experiences. So I'm hoping that the series has a future and we can build on the first season, but it's certainly a strong template for all sorts of intergenerational conversations.
Yeah. So there's a piece around connection and gathering, and Bennett, I'm kind of curious, like from the filmmaking process itself, you're gathering stories, you're creating a narrative. How might like your experience of like what it's like to work on a team to make something like this come to life? Any of the films that you've produced, like where's the parallel of what can be learned for teams inside of workplaces in general?
With the filmmaking process. Yeah, that's an interesting question, but I think, Monique mentioned Reverend Magora Kennedy, and I was thinking about her story as kind of a emblematic answer to that question. We first discovered her, or became aware of her, when our archival footage researcher presented us with an episode of the David Susskind Show from 1971. And that was, which is featured in Cured. It was the very first time that out lesbians were on television in America, 1971. And Barbara Giddings, who's one of the main activists in the story, was there with a panel of women, including Reverend Kennedy. And I think the host, David Susskind, who considered himself pretty liberal and hip, didn't quite know what hit him, because these women were so unapologetic and bold and fierce. And really, David Susskind was like, well, this is an illness and that's what the experts say. And, don't you want to, be cured and, meet a nice man. And they were forceful, to put it mildly, in pushing back. But it was from that footage that we became aware of Reverend Kennedy. We then, very fortunately, were able to find her through a Stonewall Veterans network and website. We connected with her and came to find out that as a 14-year-old teenager, she herself had really faced the very brutal consequences of the DSM diagnosis because her mother was so concerned about having a lesbian daughter that she said, either you go to a mental institution where they can cure you, or we'll forge your birth certificate and you get married at the age of 14, even though we're going to pretend that you're actually 21. So she became a major storyteller in Cured. And I think that process of like going through the steps of discovering the footage, connecting with this witness to history, and then really having her become not only part of the film, but part of the outreach. As Monique said, Reverend Kennedy had ended up joining us for over 100 of these workplace conversations when Cured was shown at various workplaces. And I think that whole process of becoming connected to her and understanding her humanity, understanding the historical pressures that affected her life, the way that she surmounted them. Because I think what the feedback we got on every single one of her appearances with us was what an inspirational and optimistic witness to history, and an intersectional one, because not only was she involved in this DSM fight, but she was also actively involved in the civil rights movement and the women's movement. And through it all, every single, like I was often feeling depressed and beaten down. And every time Reverend Kennedy joined us, she always talked about the long fight and the process of pushing back, and that idea that activism, as Joan Baez used to say, activism is the antidote to despair. And that was sort of embodied by Reverend Kennedy. And I think it's a long answer, but I'm just trying to say that as someone whom we discovered through our filmmaking research process, a whole world opened up to us, and we were able to tell her story and chronicle her story before she passed away at the age of 85. So I think this process really can lead to amazing breakthroughs.
Yes. Thank you, Bennett. I feel like I can listen to you both all day and just kind of like pitch more questions. And there's a couple of good ones in there. Naima has a question. My apologies if I'm mispronouncing your name. I'm happy to hang around for that question. I just want to give space for each of you, Monique and Bennett. Any final thoughts that you have for what we're talking about today, the power of looking into our past to just navigate these incomprehensible times, for that inspiration that I think many of us are looking for right now?
Well, from my perspective, I just want to share that the way I found Bennett and his team was really just through a Google search and wanting to bring something unique but impactful to the organization that would really encourage people to think differently and to invite in new perspectives that we hadn't considered before. And so, like I said before, people these days are consuming content in very different ways. Some people are listening to podcasts, some people are on TikTok, other people are, on, other streaming platforms. And so whenever you have the opportunity to bring people together to have a shared moment, and then you're having more shared moments talking to each other in the hallways and bringing those more shared moments in your one-on-ones or team meetings, that's really where that inspiration and that collaborative spirit is born. Because I think so many of us get tied to the X's and the O's of our day, and it's time to make the donuts, and yes, you can do that, but are you doing that in a way that makes you feel good about yourself, the people you work with, and the organization that you're working with? Not always. And so when you're building those bridges and having a deeper understanding of where everyone's coming from and building respect for those perspectives, I think these films do a beautiful job of storytelling and marking the past to the present so that you can get to the future. And I just applaud Bennett and his team for making it such a seamless process for people and organizations, not only to feature the documentary, but to do it on a platform where you can have that data to see how many people are participating And, they have all of the collateral from, photos and video clips to templates for email invitations. They've really just thought through the entire process to make it easy for professionals to bring these events to their organization.
Thank you, Monique. And Bennett, any final words from you?
Well, in terms of the question from Naima about particularly, the importance of thinking about how to have conversations about trans lives and trans experiences, one answer that comes to mind is that one of the 4 segments of Q to Q features 2 trans folks. And I think as a 10-minute snapshot of what it means to be trans, it is really powerful and really inspiring. So that is one answer to that question. There's an episode featuring Kyler Brodus, who was the first openly trans American to testify in the Senate, chatting with Junior Mint and a young trans activist from Brooklyn. And so the connection there is just really, I think, electric and uplifting. And I think more broadly, all of these films are about the process of people coming together to think about justice and change. And each of these, the Rustin film and Cured and Q to Q, all, I think, have that sense that at the bottom line is that change is possible when determined people come together to push for it. So I think that that's a source of optimism, even in dark times, that coming together, raising our voices, finding a collective cause, and continuing to speak truth to power are ways to bring about systemic and meaningful change.
Bennett, thank you so much. Thank you, Monique, for being here. For folks who are still in the space, let's give our guests a big round of applause virtually. This was fantastic. I posted in the chat, if folks are craving events like these and connection and just to kind of regulate the nervous system, we're going to be gathering next Wednesday. We're doing this once a month, complimentary somatic leadership skill building. So Monique, Bennett, you all are invited as well. And for q2qtalks.com, I posted that in our chat, and I'll also send that as a follow-up message to everyone who joined today. So thank you so much. This was fantastic. For now, just for anyone who's connected with me, just please know that we'll be offering more of these kind of events over the next few quarters, and it's a space to continue to build our belonging movement. So thank you for being here. Please take those insights and bring them back into your workplace. Monique, thanks for translating everything in business talk. And Bennett, keep making those films. They're fantastic. And I can't wait to watch the Q2Q talks. All right. Thanks, everyone. We're going to end the live stream for now. And if there's any questions that folks have in the space, I'll be here for those questions.